This is a presentation for a smaller group that I'm used to talking to. This is for those of you who are turning 60 or who are already past 60 and are going to be retiring soon. Now, you may not realise this, but you could be missing out on some extra paydays. And so this is for you. And I'm going to look at the final year before you hang up your board rubbers and pack away your chalk and move on to whatever comes next in your lives. Now, it is for a smaller group than I usually try to cover, but if it does affect you, it could make a significant difference, and I'm talking thousands of pounds. So if you are over 60, or you're going to be over 60 before you do retire, and you have any final salary benefits in the old scheme that has a pension age of 60, and you are still working, wow, you have my admiration. This presentation is aimed completely at you. And I'm going to talk to you about opting out of the pension scheme to get a better deal, and also the one reason that you shouldn't opt out or shouldn't consider opting out. For many of you, opting out will get you more money, and I'll explain how this works. But don't get me wrong, this does not work for everyone. There is one case where it could lose you money, and so you need to listen carefully when I explain this and to work out for yourself if it might apply to you or not. In fact, let me get this out of the way early on. I will explain this straight away rather than keep you hanging on till the end. The only reason not to consider what I'm about to tell you and to not try to get the extra money is because we are talking about the final salary pension scheme. And as the name suggests, if your final salary increases, then so does the pension it creates. A dramatic increase in your final salary will lead to a dramatic increase in your pension. But if you thought that doubling your final salary would automatically double the pension, I'm afraid you're going to be a little bit disappointed. There is a limit on increases in the last 3 years, and that limit is the higher of either 10% or roughly £6,000. It changes from year to year. Now, that is still a hefty increase, and yes, if your salary gets an increase in the final years, then your pension will also get that increase. That is the one reason you should ignore what I'm about to tell you, or keep it at the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about whether this might apply to you. If you see that your pay is going to increase by more than inflation, and it has to be by more than inflation to have this effect, then do not opt out, because it will stop your pension benefiting from that final increase. However, do you see that happening? Do you see yourself getting a pay rise that's over and above inflation? So I'm asking, can you see into the future? Can you? I mean, you're not Gypsy Rose with a cup of tea leaves, but I bet most of you can tell a little bit about the future. I mean, we do it all the time. We know the kind of reaction we're going to get when you give a pupil a detention for not doing their homework. There are some things we can have a very good educated guess at what is going to happen in the future. And that's what I'm going to look at here. I'm going to help educate you and to help you see just that little bit into the future, because I'm only interested in a little bit. The distance, mainly from April to August. Teachers' pay rises generally take effect in September. And so most of us can probably see that not a lot is going to happen to our pay in the 5 months in that final year of teaching from April till August. Now, if you're over 60 but are thinking about going on for another year or two, then maybe you just need to park this video and come back to it when you're in your final year. And it is really the final year where you can have the greatest impact. Although, if you're going part-time, it could have a greater effect earlier as well. So if you're thinking about going for another, I would watch this to the end, because I am going to go through situations and circumstances where it can be of a major benefit to you as well. So now we get to the real part where I explain how opting out could get you extra payday, or actually many extra paydays. And to understand this, we need to know about the rules about when your pension starts. Did you know that once you reach 60, it starts on the very first day that you stop being in the pension scheme? So if you are not employed as a teacher when you turn 60, that is the day the pension starts. Now, they won't actually start paying it to you until you apply, but it will be backdated to that day, the first day when you're 60 that you're no longer in the pension scheme. This day is called your entitlement day. And this is where it gets interesting. Why wait in your last year of teaching? Why wait until the 1st of September to start your pension? Your final salary is based on your final salary. And if the final salary in April is the same as your final salary in August, then why wait? In the past, the reason would be that you would have added 5 more months to the calculation, to the final salary pension calculation. But this year, and from this year onwards, it won't. Because from April, everybody is moving into the career average scheme. You're not going to add 5 more months to the final salary pension. So those extra 5 months that we're talking April to August are going to add nothing to the final salary pension. Instead, they go into the new career average pension. I'll come back to that in a minute, but for the moment, let's just look at the final salary pension. Now, this is where I'm going to put in some numbers to make this easier to explain. I am going to assume that up to the end of March 2022, you have 30 years service. So the pension calculation is 30/80. I'm going to assume a final salary of 40,000. So the final salary, the pension calculation, 30/80 for 40,000, which is £15,000. If you carry on as normal to your entitlement day, if you carry on as normal, your entitlement day will be the 1st of September 2022. And so your pension will be started on the 1st of September 2022, and that's when you start getting your paid your £15,000 per year. But suppose your 60th birthday was before April. If you opt out for the pension scheme for the month of April, then your entitlement day becomes the 1st of April. And because your final salary pension, whether you take it in April or in September, will be the same, what you're going to end up with is 5 extra months of pension. In this case, each month is paying out you around £1,250. So by opting out, you'd get £1,250 in April, £1,250 in May, £1,250 in June, in July, and in August. By the time you get to September, you will have received over £6,000 more than if you hadn't opted out and just waited to finish teaching on the 31st of August and started your retirement on the 1st of September. Because your entitlement day, when your pension starts, is delayed. If you opt out after you're 60, it becomes that first day when you opt out. You don't have to actually take a break from employment. You're still being teaching, you've still got your contract, you've still got that protection for redundancy. But by opting out, that's when you're entitled. That's when the pension starts getting calculated. So you can get those extra paydays in compared to leaving it until you actually finish teaching. Now, of course, if your birthday comes after April, then you can't opt out to trigger your entitlement day until the month of your birthday. I mean, that means less of an advantage, but it's still an advantage nonetheless. Now, I said there was one thing I was going to come back to, and that is what happens to your new career average pension. If you opt to trigger your entitlement day, then going back into the scheme the next month means you start a new career average pension. That isn't a problem in itself, because if you'd stayed in the scheme like everyone else after March 2022, you will be in the career average scheme anyway. But as you are starting a new scheme after becoming entitled to your pension, then to get a career average pension, you do need to be in that scheme for at least a year. Can see the problem. Given that we're looking at retiring in August, you would only get to add 4 months. So we do need to look at how much that does cost you. And are you going to lose out because you're losing those 5 months of career average pensions payments and not getting anything extra? What you're getting is the extra money from the final salary pension actually paying you out. And this is where I said, I would say you need to get your calculators out, or a friend with a calculator, to see exactly what kind of numbers we're talking about in your circumstances. Now, let me extend that example I used earlier that showed a value of a pension for a teacher who finishes on a salary of 40,000. In a year, they add 1/57th to their pension account. So on that salary, they're adding in a year just over £700. So for a single month, that is just short of £60. Now we can compare that annual amount of 60 to what getting your final salary pension early gives you. And based on that 30-year career, each month early gives us £1,250. So that would take around 21 years to make up the difference. But bear in mind that career average pension doesn't start paying out that amount until you reach 67. And so 21 years later is 88. So you haven't lost out. In fact, actually you gained up until the point you get to 88. Now, if you actually intended to work for more than a year, then you wouldn't lose out on the career average pension because you've built it up. All you've missed out is on 1 month. So that's not a great difference. We're talking £60 for the whole period, not 60 lots of every month. However, you're going to fall foul of the next thing that I'm going to explain. And that's because there's one thing that affects those who take their pension at the same time as working. And it's called the Abatement Rule. Now, this is something you may have heard of, and I call it the Pickpocket Clause. I've got another video on this if you want to understand it. It's a strange rule. It's based in the very origins of public service pension schemes, and it puts a limit on what you can get. The limit is based on the idea that you should not get more from your pension and salary than you earned at the peak of your career. As I said, it's a very strange rule. For this video, let me just simplify it just a little. The basic rule is that your salary added to your pension cannot exceed something called your salary of reference. The salary of reference is the highest salary that was used in the calculation of your final salary pension. Now, this may have an effect if you are looking to continue more than a year, but it really shouldn't be of any concern if you're looking to do it just in this final tax year. And I emphasize the tax year part because you're going to be working from April to August. You only have 5 months of full pay, and so you're not going to exceed the annual limit when that is added to 12 months of your pension being paid out. Because even if you had a 40-year career, you would only be getting half your salary as a pension. And you put those two together and they don't come to more than the whole salary. So this isn't something that will affect you if you're retiring within the same year as you opt out and you take the pension. Now, just before I finish, let's talk about that if you're thinking about going on a little bit more than a year. If you're over 60 and you're going to go on for another year or more. In this case, you are going to need a better crystal ball. You are going to need to look a bit further into the future. But crucially, the only thing you have got to worry about is whether or not you get a big pay increase. And by big, I do mean an amount above inflation. For the vast majority of you, you will be able to see this far into the future because the pay review body gets given their remit by the government well before the pay rise takes place in September. And so you're probably going to be able to see whether or not you're going to get that in your current position, get a pay rise that's above inflation. Also, you know your own careers. If you're currently in a place, in a school, in a position where you may be asked to step up to a higher post and get a pay increase that way, then holding back and not opting out very well may be in your best interest, just in case you get a bumper pay rise before you retire. Also, abatement is much more likely to affect you if you are continuing on a full timetable. Your limit is based on the full-time equivalent salary. So if you're on a part-time contract, you could gain thousands more because your pension will take the place of that missing part of your contract. For example, if you're on a 60% timetable, then you have at least another 40% that your pension can pay out before abatement even gets considered. And on the question of abatement, you must check what your salary of reference is going to be. The salary reference is the limit on how much you can get, and you may be surprised The minimum it can be is your current salary, but it can be thousands more than your current salary. The rules say that it is the highest salary that you have had that has been used in your final salary calculation. Now, I do have another video that explains that in more detail, but for now, let me simply tell you that for many teachers, it is actually higher than their current salary. And this is down to teachers having had over a decade of below inflation pay rises. And what it means is that for you, that pension could still be paying out thousands of pounds whilst you are still working, even though it maybe have some of it abated and stopped. And finally, we come to the one big advantage of taking your final salary pension after March, if you're going to go on to another year or more. And that is, you get virtually the same extra pension from those months after you take it, from the career average scheme, that you would have done if you hadn't taken the final salary pension. Because after March 2022, you will be put into the career average scheme anyway, whether you've taken the final salary pension or not. And after just 1 year in that scheme, it qualifies you for the benefits from that scheme. So yes, you'll miss the month that you opted out so that you could get your final salary pension. So 1/12 or 1/57 of your actual salary at the time. But you'll get the rest of it, well, whenever you claim it. You can wait to 67 or you can take it early. Now, bear in mind that I am not a financial advisor. I am just an ex-school teacher, hoping to teach you a little bit more about the options you have with the teacher's pension scheme. So before making any decisions, I recommend you do the maths for yourself using your exact figures and circumstances. By all means ask for help, but please don't let ignorance deter you. I am a very strong believer that in order to make the right decision, you need to have accurate data. So do get the numbers worked out and don't put it off. Taking action sooner could result in a far better outcome for you in retirement.